in the legislature. The film tax credit, it's obsolete now. Some of the lottery revenues advertising, we don't really need it. Naming rights, we could have done naming rights with some of the state properties. We had the ability to find real cuts and use the money that we had in the rainy day fund and the overall budget to legitimately backfill those projects in those schools, and we didn't do it. We missed a real opportunity because you hit it right on the head. We're going to be hurting. And the fact that we're not looking for, we haven't done an across-the-board tax cut and a payroll tax reduction to jolt the economy, I think is wrong. And that's what I would propose, because the stimulus bill, the bailouts, the mentality of just fixing it by raising the debt ceiling, we're at $12 trillion already. I mean, where does it stop? Where do we start trying something a little bit different? Because the other way isn't working.
The go-arounds?
Very simply, I think, Scott makes a good point, but the issue is never taxes. The issue is always spending. And everybody likes to say taxes because the word tax gets people votes. But the word cut spending loses people votes. And the problem is that we need individuals in Washington that are fiscally responsible. And we have to cut spending. In the private sector, what happens? Hey, we have a bad year. So what do? You have a layoff, or you cut back on a budget, or, whatever you have to do, you get by, and then in good times you get to flourish again. We don't do that a lot of times in the public sector. What we do is we bring on a bailout, or we subsidize it. And what ends up happening? You create a bigger bubble, and it eventually crumbles later on in history. Time and time again, we can see it. This is something that's proven.
So let's talk about then why we are where we started somewhat, Jim, but we did create, because we didn't have regulation, we had speculation, and we had Washington not keeping track of what was going on, an incredible recession that now has created the problem we're in. And so we did have to spend some money to get out of it. Even Scott admits to that with TARP money. I think there should have been strings attached to it. We can agree to disagree on stimulus, but it was also necessary, I believe, to make sure, as Massachusetts did, save jobs and get us moving. I've said we'll wait and see whether we need a second stimulus or not, because I think there are other ways to start moving credit, getting businesses hiring, getting training, and getting people back to work, which is where jobs come from, and that's incredibly important. And so you need a government with smart regulation to make sure that we don't have artificial bubbles and we don't let that kind of situation come around again. And we need to do more than just do what Scott says we should do, which is do exactly nothing, which is what we've been doing through the Bush-Cheney administration and now.
Well, I know you want to respond.
Well, it's pretty easy. I've already called for the if you call doing nothing, lowering taxes and lowering payroll taxes nothing, then that's obviously a very clear distinction. If you're talking about considering another bailout when the first one hasn't worked.
No, you would let the Bush tax cuts not expire. Am I wrong? You'd let the top 2% keep what they have under the Bush-Cheney administration. That, to me, is we're not going to let those expire. We'll keep the tax benefits for the very wealthiest in this country.
If we look at the tax cuts expiring, if we look at the cap and trade proposal, if we look at the health care proposal, if we look at the potential war tax, you're talking about 2.
I've never mentioned a war tax. Let me be clear.
Consider a war tax in the debate. So if you're changing now, that's okay. But if I could just respectfully to finish my answer, that would be appreciated.
No, but we're just talking about the tax cuts, and I want to be clear, because you believe that the tax cuts that the Bush-Cheney administration brought in should not expire. Is that correct?
Yes. When you're talking about Bush-Cheney, you're talking about the marriage penalties coming back, and you've benefited by that, even though you said you didn't. When you're talking about federal taxes that we pay to the federal government, Bush-Cheney expiring will increase those tax obligations to the IRS. And you're talking about the child care tax credit being cut in half. You're looking capital gains taxes increasing. You're talking an across-the-board tax increase for every business and citizen in this entire, not only the state, entire country. And when you're talking about we need to do targeted tax credits and all this other stuff, I've been doing it for 12 years. We've been doing all that. We need to do a little bit more now nationally, because the out-of-control spending, the trillions of dollars of debt that we're incurring, our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids, they're never going to be able to pay it back. And to think that we have to go to China to borrow money so we can pay our just everyday debt, it's out of control. We need to look at a different way, because the stimulus hasn't worked. And for Martha to say, oh, it's doing great, it's working, 49 out of 50 and actually releasing the money. So, and we need the money now. And the money that's being used is merely going to benefit municipalities. It's not going to the shovel-ready projects to actually create jobs, real jobs that have that have names attached to it, with people going out and putting a shovel in the ground and fixing our infrastructure. Things are going to last for generations to come. The quick fixes are over. We need to do it a little bit differently. And refer back to Bush Cheney and all that. I'm not living on the mistakes of the past. I'm trying to address the mistakes of today.
But you would let
the mistakes of today. That's what we need to do, is address them today, not yesterday. I'm not Bush Cheney. You're not running against them. I'm Scott Brown from Rentham, and you're running against me. So the whole Bush Cheney, referrals all the time, that's old. That joke's old. We have to address things today. We need to look how to fix things today. And that's what an across-the-board JFK-style tax cut will do, because the other way isn't working.
We've got a whole 2 minutes left before closing statement, so feel free to respond, because we're really not going to get to another question.
Just so I'm clear, can we get a simple answer? You would let the top 2% keep the tax cuts that they got during the Bush-Cheney administration. That's a yes or a no?
It's not a yes or no, and I'm not going to play the yes or no game.
Well, if you can't answer yes or no, then I don't want to answer.
You've asked me the question, so...
I'll give you a yes or no.
Well, let me tell you, that you're talking about that 2% is also the individual sole proprietors are using their Social Security numbers to create jobs. The businesses, the small businesses, that's how they run their business. They're not big corporations. You're talking about hurting mom-and-pop businesses, the lifeblood of our state here. You want to throw in the cap and trade, the energy, which is an energy tax, folks. You're talking about the expiring tax cuts. You're talking about a health care bill that's going to crush jobs in Massachusetts. And now you're saying something a little bit different, and I appreciate you kind of coming back to center on these issues, but it's $2.1 trillion extra dollars, and it's not good for Massachusetts. The proposals, you're a very nice woman. I've said that. You have great respect for your prosecutor experience. But you're wrong on these issues, and it's going to hurt businesses in Massachusetts.
Scott, as Attorney General, I brought back $1 billion.
That's your job. You're supposed to do that. That's why we give you a budget to do that.
And I did it very well.
Every Attorney General's done it very well. That's your job.
I disagree with that, but I've done that very well, and that's the responsible piece of making sure that we address problems that we have now.
Go ahead. You've got about 20 seconds.
Yes, very quickly. So I would absolutely keep them in place. I will keep them in place. More importantly, we haven't talked about spending. Nobody wants to talk about cutting of spending. I have come out and I've gone on the record and I've said I will bring back the troops from Iraq and Iran, saving billions of dollars. I will repeal every plank, dollar, and dime of Obamacare, saving $1.1 trillion in waste that will happen that would require a 12% increase for the top 50% of people who pay taxes right now.
That is all the time we have. Time to go to closing statements. Each candidate gets 2 minutes. Again, we drew names, and we'll go around the table. We'll begin 2 minutes. Ms. Coakley.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for hosting us here today, and I appreciate the chance to talk with my colleagues about this, because on January 19th, you have a choice, and you can pick who is going to go to Washington and face the serious economic and other issues that we need to address, not just for us, but for our kids and for our grandchildren. I grew up in Western Massachusetts.